So, hi, we're with Joe Fraser Surveyors this afternoon to get some questions answered on survey work and what's going on at the moment. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Hi, John. Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Good. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're based, and what you do.
Yeah, so we're based in Stockton. We're a firm of surveyors. We do predominantly residential survey and valuation work. Typically, we're involved in pre-purchase residential surveys, home buyers, building surveys, and valuations. But as a firm, we cover a wide range of property consultancy, whether that be commercial or residential, building consultancy, business rates, enfranchisement. So we cover quite a lot of specialisms.
Great. And we were just talking a second ago, there's a lot of confusion at the moment in relation to, especially within our industry, obviously what people can and can't do. We're getting inquiries for viewings that, our view is that we can't do them at the present time. What are you able to do currently, or what have you not been able to but now are able to do?
Yeah, absolutely, John. Like you say, I think there is still a lot of confusion in the property market generally, especially in the residential side when properties are occupied. Just starting from this week, following the announcements yesterday and the new guidance published by the government, we are starting to carry out physical inspections of properties again, and that includes occupied properties, but it's subject to stringent risk assessments, ensuring that surveyors are safe, occupants of the property are safe, trying to inspect vacant properties where possible, or for occupants of properties to leave the property during inspection. And it's this concept of the COVID secure environments, and that we're ensuring that we work to make sure everybody's kept safe. So as of this week, we can carry out surveys with a view to helping people who are already into those transactions complete their purchases. I think until the estate agents, you briefly mentioned it there, they can't carry out any viewings, marketing appraisals. Until that point, I think the sector is going to be very slow, because it's only those existing transactions where people still need a demand for surveys. And the clients we've spoke to, they've been very happy to wait until this point, appreciating that nothing can go ahead, but now quite keen to complete their purchases. But we're waiting for advice from the government to see what will happen in your sector, specifically with estate agents, which will be the gateway, in my opinion, to allowing everything to take off and to start again.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll find a bit more information this week or as the week goes on. I think we're estimating 1st of June, but that might vary. A lot of lending and the pipelines, I guess, are just held up, as you say, aren't they, by the mortgage process. There's lots of mortgages that are in process that unless the lending's at a specific loan to value, they're not able to, or you haven't been able to get into. The whole sort of pipeline process has been rather held up by the lack of ability to do surveys. So I think they'll want to get everything back and moving, we hope, as soon as possible. So if I'm buying a property, I guess the first thing would be, why would I want to have a survey done?
Yeah, of course. So if you're getting a mortgage on a property, the mortgage company will do a valuation for their own purposes, and especially in the current environment, that's a higher chance that will be a desktop valuation. So the surveyor won't actually even visit the property. They're just making sure that the property is suitable security for that loan. So now it's more important than ever to actually have somebody look at the property and carry out a physical inspection and perform a condition survey of the property. And that could be a home buyer's survey for more recent properties built within the last 120 years in relatively good condition, or at least appear it. Or you could go for the building survey, which is a very, very thorough survey and report for those older properties, the altered ones, properties that have been significantly extended or in a serious state of disrepair and quite clearly need a lot of investigation to see what's going on and what kind of condition the property is in. So the survey is paramount. You should never buy any property without getting a survey done. And of course I would say that, but there's a lot of research there from the RICS that shows that the hidden defects that arise when people don't get surveys and what that can lead to in terms of costs. So we would always recommend getting a thorough survey before proceeding.
Yeah, and the most popular one, I guess, realistically, is a home buyers, which is what, 16-page document?
Yeah, in terms of pages, it'll vary in terms of the type of property and its condition as well. But the home buyers is most popular. It suits a lot of circumstance. It comes with a valuation and an insurance reinstatement cost assessment as well. So you're getting a condition of the property, you're getting a second opinion on the valuation, and you're getting the rebuild value for your insurer. So it's certainly good value for money.
Yeah. So one of the areas you mentioned there, the valuation, pretty subjective, I guess, in the main. So what is the sort of ruling or sort of thought in survey terms? Doing evaluation, I guess if you get it down valued, that then creates problems with renegotiation, and I guess estate agents would realistically say, we know more than you, so why be doing down valued it? And you'll say that reverse. What is the sort of thinking in relation to how you would uphold the value of the purchase price?
Okay, yeah, so I think the thing to remember when we're performing evaluation is we're looking for comparable transactions. So we're looking for similar properties that have transacted ideally within the last 3 to 6 months that are very, very similar to the subject property. So this is where maybe the difference of opinion will arise between estate agents and surveyors, because estate agents, as you say, you're at the forefront of the market. You've got a real good feeling for what's going on, what buyers are looking for, what they're willing to pay. Whereas as surveyors, we're waiting for those transactions to actually turn up in the land registry, so we can see those completed sales and then refer to them as comparables. So at the moment, if we're performing a valuation in the current climate, kind of, in the COVID lockdown, we're not seeing those comparables change as of yet, because very little is completed during this time. It'll be in the coming months as some of the transactions start to complete during the lockdown, where we see if there is a change in prices, whether that be staying the same, increasing or falling during this period. So at the moment, our advice to anyone is to keep that valuation under review. The RICS have produced model clauses on uncertainty during this time, but it will be a few months before we start to see what the market actually did during this period for us to then report in terms of our comparable information. What are you seeing, John, in terms of the market? Have you had any deals renegotiated, or is everything going through at the price?
Yeah, no, touch wood, not many fall throughs, and certainly not many renegotiations. I guess, a buyer's perspective might be that the market might have some correction, so that can clearly be in their advantage thinking. Sellers, I'm sure, will be the opposite. My gut feeling is that so far the market, we've had a lot of inquiries for properties still. There's not been much coming on in the last, next to nothing really in the last 2 months. So I think when potentially, let's say June, when things start to come back on the market, I don't know. I mean, obviously a little bit biased, but I suspect there might be pent up interest for, properties that have been on the market for a while, but obviously for new. So people are waiting and looking for new. I think people will have been in lockdown for the last 2 months, and so a lot of people working from home might be thinking, I need a study or a 4th bedroom or an additional room going forward. There'll be a lot of people that maybe don't have as much garden as they would have wished throughout this, and they might be thinking, we need more garden if this were ever to occur again. And I don't know whether the countryside and villages has necessarily been as popular in recent times, but I think going forward that will be another area of popularity where people do want to live in the villages. I mean, in Stokesley, for example, it's great because we've been able to walk out, go for runs, you straight into country lanes and not really interacting. Whereas, you drive through some of the other places around, and it's chaos, isn't it? With people cycling, walking, it's certainly much busier. So I think more people will want to move out to the country, and potentially will want to move for things that they've missed during lockdown. So, fingers crossed, without being unduly biased, I would say that, there could well be some pent up interest in the market. But, I think it'd be interesting from a surveying point of view, when it's see, is there going to be a cautious approach from lenders, or will lenders be keen to get money back into the marketplace so the whole thing can keep moving? So, it'll be an interesting couple of months, won't it, post lockdown?
Yeah, of course. I mean, yes, stereotypically optimistic as an estate agent, of course, but I do to an extent agree, actually, and I think that those properties that they've got the right characteristics, good properties that always kind of perform well and sell well, I think there will still be good demand. If anything, it might be those properties that have always struggled, may struggle a little bit more if the market isn't quite as robust as it was prior to coronavirus. In terms of the lenders, I think at the moment we have seen them reduce their loan to values. It's typical, activity of the lenders and the banks have become very cautious when there's any uncertainty. So as you say, it'll be interesting to see what their approach is when some normality returns. Hopefully with the recent guidance, that then gives a gateway for valuers from the big mortgage valuation firms to get back to business and to start carrying out their inspections, which should increase the availability of mortgages in the market for those higher loan to values where physical inspection is essential for the lender to proceed with the loan. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think when we can essentially can get back to some degree of normality, I guess you're going to be pretty busy, aren't you, with the pent-up level of surveys that are waiting to happen. So if you're coming to, I know it's going to depend a little bit clearly on the type of survey and obviously the size of property, but typically if I was expecting you to come to my house to do a survey, how long do you think you might be, does it take, how long should I take off work to allow for that to happen?
Yeah, sure. So for a home buyer's survey from start to finish, but this includes looking at the exterior and the grounds of the property as well, maybe up to about an hour and a half. For a building survey, it would depend on the property type and how big it is, but that could be anywhere from maybe 2 to 4 hours on site. So not all of that time is going to be spent inside the property. So a couple of hours would be more than enough time to, set aside to allow the surveyor to come in, inspect the internal of the property, and then the rest could be done from the outside and, hopefully not cause too much inconvenience or disruption.
Great. And your report generally would have, so a surveyor's report nowadays has essentially a traffic light system within it. So explain a little bit about how that would look. So I'm getting my report from you. So a lot of first-time buyers, a lot of people having a survey for the first time, don't they? They get the survey report from the surveyor, and obviously depending on how it's worded, they're like, oh my God, the place is falling down. Not always the case, but essentially, how does the traffic light system work in terms of somebody reading the survey for the first time?
Yeah, so there's 3 of the RICS home surveys: the level 1 condition report, the level 2 home buyers survey, and the level 3 building survey that operate on the traffic light system. There are other types of survey, there's bespoke reports, which firms such as ourselves provide as well, but the most popular ones are certainly the traffic light surveys, because they're perceived to be easy, for the buyer to read and interpret and the condition of the property. So that's typically green is a 1, nothing's required, no repairs needed, maintain the property in its usual way. Amber is a 2, where some maintenance is required. There might be a defect that needs addressing, but it's not particularly urgent. And then condition rating 3 is something that's quite urgent or a serious defect, but also something that needs further investigation. So sometimes you might open a report and see on the front page services, gas, electric, condition rating 3s. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with them, but it'll be saying that you need to get further investigation. As surveyors, we're not engineers, we don't test those services, but what we're doing is signposting in the right direction, saying this is the information that you would need to obtain through your legal advisor from the vendor as part of the process. So that's how the condition ratings work. But it's important, at times survey reports can look a bit alarmist with the condition ratings. Surveyors often disagree on what defects would fall into which category. So there is always that room for the author to make their own personal judgment on where a defect sits within that condition rating system. And it's important to read the body of the report to then really understand what the surveyor is saying, and follow it up with a phone call and a chat to make sure you understand what the implications are. Some repairs can be quite minor in terms of their cost, and certainly not worth pulling out of a transaction for.
Yeah, I think that's important, isn't it? When you get your survey and you see the red, it's not really, obviously it's not a danger of sorts, but it isn't necessarily the sort of, oh my God, quickly, I shouldn't buy this. It is really suggesting that it needs further investigation, and obviously there are other areas that can be pursued. So I guess it might be in terms of getting a roof, or if it's identifying something in that respect, damp and so on. So it really is saying just get more information or specialist information provided, rather than necessarily it's red, run for the hills. So I think that's kind of an important message for people looking at surveys to see and understand. But that's brilliant. Great. Well, we really appreciate spending the time, giving us a bit of insight into the survey world. Fingers crossed we're all back to normality relatively soon, and we'll see you soon enough. But in the meantime, thanks ever so much for your time. Any questions you might have for Joe, we'll put his details in the post. So if you have any survey questions, or you want to ask him anything further, do feel free to get in touch with us, or indeed do feel free to get in touch with Joe direct and ask him directly. But Joe, thanks ever so much for your time. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.